Hi, grade four, it's Miss Whitmore here. So because there's so many issues with the Tale of Despereaux video link that I had given you, I'm actually going to be reading it to you from now on. So you're going to find these videos posted once a week based on how many readings I need you to do. It's probably going to be one reading a week that you have to listen to from me. Yeah, so I'll just get started. So some of you might have already had access to these. I know some kids were able to listen to the recordings and others weren't. If you have already done this, you do not need to do it over again. But this is mostly for the kids that weren't able to get any access to the videos. So I'm going to start. We're on chapter 29. It's called Start with the Kersey and Finish with the Thread. Midgery So's luck continued. On her first day on the job as a castle servant, she was sent to deliver a spool of red thread to the princess. Mind, said the house of the serving staff, a doorwoman named Louise. She is royalty, so you must make sure you curtsy. How's that? Shouted Midge. You must curtsy, shouted Louise. Gore, said Midge. Yes'm. She took the spool of thread from Louise and made her way up the golden stairs to the princess's room, talking to herself as she went. Here I am, off to see the princess. Me, Midgery So, seeing the princess up close and personal like. And first off, I must curtsy because she is royalty. So you can't see this, but in the book, the proper word is curtsy with a T. Midgery So pronounces it Kersey. Not too sure why, but probably because she can't hear well, I'm going to guess, because we learned that she got a bunch of clouts to the ear from that uncle that bought her from her dad. At the door to the princess's room, Midge had a sudden crisis of confidence. She stood a moment, clutching the spool of thread and muttering to herself. Now, how did that go? She said. Give the princess the thread, and then give her a kersey? No, no. First the kersey and then the thread. That's it. Go. That's right. That's the order. Start with the kersey and finish with the thread. She knocked at the princess's door. Enter, said the pea. Midge, hearing nothing, knocked again. Enter, said the pea, and Midge, still hearing nothing, knocked yet again. Maybe, she said to herself, the princess ain't too home. But then the door flung wide, and there was the princess herself, staring right at Midgery So. Gore, said Midge, her mouth hanging open. Hello, said the pea. Are you the new servicing maid? Have you brought me my thread? Kersey I must, shouted Midge. She gathered her skirts, dropped the spool of thread, stuck a foot out, and stepped on the spool, rocked back and forth for what seemed like quite a long time, both to the watching princess and the rocking Midge, and finally fell to the floor with a middish thud. Whoopsie, said Midgery So. The pea could not help it. She laughed. That's all right, she said to Midge, shaking her hand. It's the spirit of the thing that counts. How's that? Shouted Midge. It's the spirit of the thing that counts, shouted Pea. Thank you, miss, said Midge. She got slowly to her feet. She looked at the princess. She looked down at the floor. First the kersey, and then the thread, Midge muttered. Pardon, said the pea. Gore, said Midge. The thread! She dropped to her hands and knees to locate the spool of thread. When she found it, she stood back up and offered it to Pea. I brought you thread, didn't I? Lovely, said the princess, as she took the thread from Midge. Thank you so much. I cannot seem to hold on to spool of red thread. Everyone I have disappears somehow. Are you making a thing? asked Midge, squinting at the cloth in P's hand. I am making a history of the world, my world, said the P. In tapestry, see? Here is my father, the king, and he is playing the guitar because that is something he loves to do, and does quite well. And here is my mother, the queen, and she is eating soup because she loved soup. Soup? Gore! That's against the law. Yes, said the princess. My father outlawed it because my mother died while she was eating it. Your ma's dead? Yes, said the P. She died just last month. She bit her bottom lip to stop it from trembling. Ain't that the thing, said Midge. My ma is dead too. How old were you when she died? Bold was I? Said Midge, taking a step back away from the princess. I'm sorry then. No, how old? How old were you? Shouted the P. Not but 6, said Midge. I'm sorry, said the princess. She gave Midge a quick, deep look of sympathy. How old are you? 12 years. So am I, said the princess. We're the same age. What is your middle name? What is your middle name? She shouted. Midgery. Midgery so, but most just calls me Midge. And I saw you once before, princess. You passed me by on a little white horse. On my birthday it was, and I was in the field with Uncle's sheep, and it was sunset time. Did I wave to you? Asked the princess. Eh? Did I wave? Shouted the P. Yes, nodded Midge. But you didn't wave back, said the princess. I did, said Midge. Only you didn't see. Some day I will sit on a little white horse and wear a crown and wave. Some day, said Midge, and she put up a hand to touch her left ear. I will be a princess too. Really, said the P, and she gave Midge another quick, deep look, but said nothing else. When Midge finally made her way back down the golden stairs, Louise was waiting for her. How long, she roared, did it take you to deliver a spool of thread to the princess? Too long, guessed Midge. That's right, said Louise, and she gave Midge a good clout to the ear. You are not destined to be one of our star servants. That is already abundantly clear. No, ma'am, said Midge. That's all right, though, because I aim to be a princess. You? A princess? Don't make me laugh. This, reader, was a little joke on Louise's part, as she was not a person who laughed. Ever. Not even at a notion as ridiculous as Midgery So becoming a princess. So that was the end of chapter 29, and we are on to chapter 30. And it is called To the Dungeon. At the castle, for the first time in her young life, Midge had enough to eat, and eat she did. She quickly became plump, and then plumper still. She grew rounder and bigger, only her head stayed small. Reader, as the teller of this tale, it is my duty from time to time to utter some hard and rather disagreeable truths. In the spirit of honesty, then, I must inform you that Midge was the tiniest bit lazy, and two, she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That is, she was a bit slow-witted. Because of these shortcomings, Louise was hard-pressed to find a job that Midgery So could effectively perform. In quick succession, Midge failed as a lady-in-waiting. She was caught trying on the gown of a visiting duchess. A seamstress, she sewed the cloak of the riding master to her own frock and ruined the broth. And as a chambermaid sent to clean a room, she stood, open-mouthed and delighted, admiring the gold walls and floors and tapestries, exclaiming over and over again, "Gore, ain't it pretty? Gore, ain't it something then?" and did no cleaning at all. And while Midge was trying and failing at these many domestic chores, Other important things were happening in the castle. The rat in the dungeon below was pacing and muttering in the darkness, waiting to take his revenge on the princess. And upstairs in the castle, the princess had met a mouse, and the mouse had fallen in love with her. Will there be consequences? You bet. Just as Midge's inability to perform any job well had its consequences. For finally, as a last resort, Louise sent Midge to the kitchen, where Cook had a reputation for dealing effectively with difficult help. In Cook's kitchen, Midge dropped eggshells in the pound cake batter. She scrubbed the kitchen floor with cooking oil instead of cleanser. She sneezed directly on the king's pork chop moments before it was to be served. Of all the good-for-nothings I have encountered, shouted the cook, surely you are the worst, the most cauliflower-eared, the good-for-nothingest. There's only one place left for you, the dungeon. Huh? Said Midge, cupping her hand to her ear. You are being sent to the dungeon. You are to take the jailer his noonday meal. That will be your duty from now on. Reader, you know that the mice of the castle feared the dungeon. Must I tell you that humans feared it too? Certainly it was never far from their thoughts. In the warm months, a foul odor rose from its dark depths and permeated the whole castle. And in the still, cold nights of winter, terrible howls issued from a dark place, as if the castle itself were weeping and moaning. It's only the wind, the people of the castle assured each other, nothing but the wind. Many a serving girl had been sent to the dungeon, bearing the jailer's meal, only to return white-faced and weeping, hands trembling, teeth chattering, insisting that they would never go back. And worse, there were whispered stories of those servant girls who had been given a job of feeding the jailer, who had gone down the stairs and into the dungeon, and who had never been seen or heard from again. Do you believe that this will be Midge's fate? Gore, I hope not. What kind of story would this be without Midge? Listen, you cauliflower-eared fool, shouted the cook. This is what you do. You take the tray of food down to the dungeon, and you wait for the old man to eat the food, and then you bring the tray back up. Do you think you can manage that? Aye, I reckon so, said Midge. I take the old man the tray, and he eats what's on it, and then I bring the tray back up. Empty it would be then. I bring the empty tray back up from the deep downs. That's right, said the cook. Seems simple, don't it? But I'm sure you'll find a way to bungle it. Eh? Said Midge. Nothing, said the cook. Good luck to you. You'll be needing it. She watched as Midge descended the dungeon stairs. They were the very same stairs, reader, that the mouse Despereaux had been pushed down the day before. Unlike the mouse, however, Midge had a light on. On the tray with the food there was a single flickering candle to show her the way. She turned on the stairs and looked back at the cook and smiled. That cauliflower-eared good-for-nothing fool, said the cook, shaking her head. What's to become of someone who goes into the dungeon smiling, I ask you? Reader, for the answer to Cook's question, you must read on. Okay, chapter 31, and this is the last chapter now. It's called A Song in the Dark. The terrible foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Midge. Perhaps that is because sometimes when Uncle was giving her a good clout to the ear, he missed his mark and delivered a good clouts to Midge's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted the proper working of Midge's olfactory senses, and so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair and hopelessness and evil was not at all discernible to her, and she went happily down the twisting and turning stairs. Gore, she shouted. It's dark, ain't it? Yes, it is, Midge, she answered herself. But if I was a princess, I would be so glittery, light-like, that there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me. At this point, Midgery-So broke into a little song that went something like this. I'm not sure how to sing this. I ain't the Princess P, but someday I will be. The P, ha he, someday I will be. Midge, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer. More of a bellower, really. But in her little song there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music. And as Midge went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat wrapped in a cloak of red and wearing a spoon on his head. Yes, yes, whispered the rat, a lovely song, just the song I've been waiting to hear. And Rousseau quietly fell in step beside Midgery-So. At the bottom of the stairs, Midge shouted out into the darkness, "Gore, it's me, Midgery-So! Most calls me Midge, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deepdowns." There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous way. It was quiet in the way of small, frightening sounds. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from around a darkened corner there came a low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon, and their long tails dragging behind them. Through the blood and muck, reader, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all of these disturbing and ominous sounds. If I were standing in the dungeon, I would hear these sounds. If we were standing together in the dungeon, we would hear these sounds, and we would be very frightened. We would cling to each other in our fear. But what did Midgery-So hear? That's right, absolutely nothing. And so she was not afraid at all, not in the least. And she held the tray higher, and the candle shed its weak light on the towering pile of spoons and bowls and kettles. "Gore," said Midge. "Look at them things. I ain't never imagined there could be so many spoons in this whole wide world." "There is more to this than any one could imagine," said a booming voice from the darkness. "True, true," whispered Rousseau. "The old jailer speaks true." "Gore," said Mitch. "Who said that?" And she turned in the direction of the jailer's voice. Okay, I'm going to stop here because that's where your questions stop and my voice hurts. So I hope that was a little bit rough. I haven't talked to anyone today. I've been alone all day, so that was my first time talking. Yeah, so just answer those questions, please, and stay tuned for the next video. See you.